We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Tuesday, February 24th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Chuyeon.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Also, Brooke is with us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
For coming in. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's the second day of the work week, and today also marks a somber milestone, the 4th anniversary of the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war. It's a conflict that continues to shape global security and everyday lives far beyond the battlefield. So Jiyeon, where does the Russia-Ukraine war stand today?
So as you mentioned, yes, today marks 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the war is still ongoing with intense fighting continuing in eastern and southern regions. Cities and energy facilities remain frequent targets, especially during the winter month. And we have reported this several times in Arirang. According to various reports, the combined number of casualties on both sides is now estimated to have reached around 1.8 million people, though exact figures remain difficult to verify. Ukraine continues to rely heavily on Western military support, while Russia has expanded domestic arms production in order to sustain the war effort. But what began as a swift offensive has turned into a prolonged and costly war that is wearing both sides down and also reshaping Europe's security landscape.
Right, so 4 years on, what was once seen as regional conflict has fundamentally reshaped how countries think about security and preparedness. So do you have anything to add on this?
Well, those were some staggering numbers that Joo-hyun just presented us with, and it really is heart-wrenching to think that this has been going on for 4 long years. I truly cannot imagine what people are going through dealing with this every day. So I think I speak for all of us when I say that we hope for a resolution to come soon here. And on that front, the United States and other countries have been working to mediate the conflict. There have been multiple attempts at negotiation aimed at ending this war. However, both sides still seem to be quite far apart on key issues, namely territorial disputes. So for Ukraine, they are insisting on restoring territorial integrity, but for Russia's part, they are continuing to claim annexed regions. So with these core disagreements still happening, they have prevented meaningful progress towards a lasting peace deal or even a ceasefire. And that is why still 4 years on, we are talking about this war, and there does not seem to be an end in sight at the moment.
So despite ongoing diplomatic efforts, it sounds like the fundamental positions of both sides haven't really shifted, making a breakthrough difficult. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The Russia-Ukraine war has now entered its 4th year, and it is the deadliest conflict Europe has seen since World War II. As the war drags on, other countries in the region are taking bold steps to ensure their security, and growing attention is turning to military conscription, once thought to be a thing of the past for much of Europe. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at whether conscription is making a comeback across Europe, how South Korea remains one of the most well-known conscription systems, and how young people today feel about mandatory military service. As we just saw in the video, the prolonged war is reshaping not only battlefields, but also how countries think about national defense. Across Europe, governments are now reassessing whether volunteer armies alone are enough in an increasingly unstable security environment. So, are we really seeing the return of conscription in Europe with the Russia-Ukraine war, Jiyeon?
Unfortunately, yes. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, several European countries have begun reconsidering conscription. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, most European nations significantly reduced their armed forces and shifted to all volunteer systems, believing large-scale war on the continent was unlikely. However, the war in Ukraine has fundamentally changed that perception. Governments now view territorial defense and military readiness as urgent priorities once again. So countries such as Croatia, Latvia and Serbia have either reinstated or expanded their mandatory service. These changes show that across Europe, security concerns are reshaping defense policy right now.
Right, so what was once seen like a Cold War relic is suddenly becoming a realistic policy option again, even in countries that moved away from mandatory service decades ago. And Germany in particular seems to be drawing a lot of attention with this newly introduced system. So Brooke, what exactly is changing in Germany's military service system?
So under Germany's new system, which is going to start this year, all 18-year-old men and women will receive a written inquiry asking about their willingness to serve. Now, women are not required to respond to this inquiry, but men must reply. And for now, Germany does plan to rely on volunteers. But if that proves to be insufficient, then they are saying that they could very well amend the law and reinstate conscription. Now, moving on to other places, Denmark has already revised its law to require 18-year-old women as well to undergo conscription assessments. And Finland and Estonia are also considering expanding military obligations to include women as well. Now, we are going to talk about the differences a little bit more later, but here in South Korea, only healthy men are required to join the military. Women are allowed to volunteer if they wish, but it is not an obligation. In contrast, we're seeing now in several European countries, they are moving toward more gender-neutral systems, either by including women in their draft eligibility or actively debating whether this equal obligation should come into play at some point. I think this does reflect a broader shift in how military service is being defined in modern societies. I'm not sure if we'll see that make its way all the way to Korea, but it is an interesting topic that is seeing a lot of debate.
Right, it's also striking, especially the idea that governments are preparing legal pathways now, even if full conscription hasn't officially returned yet. And what's also notable is how this shift is expanding to include women, which marks a major cultural change for many countries. So how are younger Europeans reacting to the possibility of conscription coming back? Because that obviously impacts them the most.
Yes, obviously, yes. Well, so the group most directly affected by these decisions is ZZ. In Germany, as you mentioned, shortly after the new military service framework was announced, tens of thousands of students took the streets in protest. Many young people view conscription as a demand to sacrifice their future for decisions made by older generations, especially by the government. For a generation already struggling with rising housing costs and job insecurity, including economic pressure, the policy feels like an additional burden to them. Some openly question why they should be asked to defend a system that they believe has not properly supported them before. So there's also some concerns that compulsory service could interrupt education and career plans at a critical stage of their lives. And while government argue that national security must come first, many young Europeans are asking whether fairness and opportunity are being equally considered. So for many young Europeans, security alone is not enough.
And that stance is also quite understandable and also shows how deeply this issue connects to generational concerns, not just security, but young people also have to think about the fairness and economic pressure as well. And for many young people, military service is being weighed against already difficult realities that they're facing, jobs and housing and even more. And this reaction, of course, doesn't appear to be limited to Germany alone. So are you seeing similar responses from young people in other European countries?
That's right. As we just saw in the footage, young people in Germany were protesting, and it's not just happening in Germany. There have been other demonstrations for similar reasons in different places. Looking at France, conscription at this point has only been just on the table as a discussion point. Nothing has been implemented as of yet, but even just talking about the idea has young people up in arms. They reacted very strongly to the idea of this change. So what happened was the government said that they were going to increase the defense budget in this year's budget plan. And in response to that, unions led by young workers organized protests. And their slogan was, "Strike to protect our pensions." So they are strongly in opposition to this defense budget because they think the budget should be going toward other problems like social welfare and retirement protections. Those are the priorities that they want the government to focus on. So I think, needless to say, if France were to actually seriously consider implementing conscription at this point, there would probably be significant backlash from their young people.
I think the reality is for young people, defense policy is no longer just a military issue, but a social and an economic one for many young people. So we also want to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, how should military service be organized? Here's what the results showed. So 53% support conscription for both men and women, suggesting growing acceptance of shared national defense responsibilities. Meanwhile, 36% favor maintaining an all-volunteer military, reflecting continued support for professional armed forces. Only 11% believe conscription alone should apply to men alone, indicating declining backing for traditional male-only service systems. So what stands out here is that more people seem to be open to the idea of more shared responsibility, but the results also show there's no clear consensus yet, with a significant portion still preferring a professional volunteer military over mandatory service. So to get a first-hand perspective on this, we're going to talk to a young person from Germany, and that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Quentin, a college student from Germany. Hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, thank you to be here.
So, Quentin, what's driving Germany to consider a return to conscription?
I would say because of the security situation in Europe, it's becoming more tense in Europe, and we have not enough people in our army in Germany to fill the gap. I would say to fill this gap of the missing people in the army.
I see,
Yeah.
Then how are young people in Germany like you reacting to the idea of conscription?
Most of the people, I think, especially young people, they want not to be committed to the military service. They want to have the free choice to make to make yeah, to make their own sorry, what I'm trying to say, most of the people, especially young people, and I would say maybe I would say the most young people are against the conscription because they want to have they want not to make this military service. They feel like missing from I'm
That's all right. I understand what you're saying, that they want to
Yeah.
feel free to make their own
I'm
decisions,
trying.
right?
My English is not the best. It's very I'm a little bit nervous.
It's okay. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. My last question for you would be, what's your own personal take on military service being mandatory?
I think my own take on military service. I said people should make their own choice. People shouldn't be committed to make a service, and I think people should should have, especially young people should have the choice to make their own way on their life, and when they don't see that on training on a weapon to secure the country. People should make the choice to people shouldn't be committed to these acts. I would say, yeah, I would say this is my take. I think people shouldn't be committed to be on the, how do I say, on the extreme situation like war to be drafted out and yeah.
Yeah, I
must
think
protect the country. Yeah.
I think a lot of young people. Right, yeah, and I think a lot of young people could relate to what you're saying. You know, the fact that it's becoming mandatory. You know, there's so many things that young people have to deal with now. Like we talked about jobs and housing. So yeah, I think that's really relatable no matter where you're from. So right, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Quentin.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for my bad English.
No,
I tried
great.
my best.
You're great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
So we just spoke with a college student from Germany about why the German government is reconsidering conscription, how younger generations are reacting, and his personal view on mandatory military service. And while this debate may feel new in parts of Europe, it's something South Korea actually has been living with for decades now. So for those who aren't as familiar, what does military conscription work? How does it look like in South Korea, Julian?
Well, Brooke mentioned a little bit earlier, yes, South Korea remains one of the most well-known conscription countries in the world. All physically fit men, including my two sons in the future, are required to serve, typically for about 18 months in their early 20s. And technically, the Korean War has never formally ended, as the two Koreas remain under an armistice rather than a peace treaty. That reality continues to shape a strong sense of security awareness in society because military service coincides with a crucial stage of education and career development. The issue remains highly sensitive among young men and their families, of course. However, according to a 2023 national survey on security awareness, only 14% of respondents said they would be willing to participate in combat if war were to break out on the Korean Peninsula. So this marks a steady decline from 23% in 2014 and 22% in 2020. At the same time, as you may know, South Korea's rapidly declining birth rate has raised concerns that maintaining the current troop levels may become difficult after 2030. Calls for a smaller elite volunteer force are growing now, and the debate is just beginning.
And that's quite telling. Even in a country where military service has long been seen as unavoidable, public willingness to actually fight appears to be declining. But of course, South Korea isn't the only model. Some countries have taken a completely different approach by relying entirely on volunteer forces. So the US is one of the best known volunteer military systems. So Brooke, how do young Americans view serving in the military these days?
Well, it's certainly different from how it's viewed here in Korea, where it's kind of seen as an interruption or an inconvenience. It's an obligation. But in America, it's seen as a very heroic choice. It is honorable and sacred and a sort of patriotic act to do for your country. So public perception of the military is generally pretty positive. You will be given a lot of respect as a veteran, and you also get many benefits such as education support through the GI Bill, health care, housing, career opportunities. I mean, the list goes on. And of course, this makes military service quite attractive. Even for young people who have dreams of doing something else in the future, it's a great jumping off point because it's entry level. You can go right in, get on your feet. You can get financial stability and good experience that will be viewed positively later on. And it's also a valid long-term career choice as well. Many people decide to do that as their chosen career path. So for those reasons, a lot of people want to volunteer. And I do want to add that my best friend is actually retired Navy, and she speaks very highly of the benefits that you can get from the military. In fact, she still has health care and access to military bases despite being retired. But she did want me to make this point, which is that we talk about America as a voluntary military system. But for a lot of people, it's not really a choice, it's their only way out. And so some people say that if America were to offer better livable wages and more affordable health care, then we would probably see fewer volunteers. So just another perspective to look at it. But overall, I would say that the voluntary military service brings in people that genuinely want to serve their country and also enjoy the benefits that come with it.
So that's a really interesting contrast. Military service there seems like less like an obligation, more like a career choice, or also opportunities as well. But regardless of whether countries rely on conscription or volunteers, the debate around military service is far from settled. So beyond conscription itself, what other controversies or debates are emerging around military service today?
Yes, you said far from settled. Yes, beyond reinstating conscription, several broader debates are emerging. One major issue is whether mandatory service should apply equally to us, to women, as some European countries, as Bruce mentioned, are already moving toward gender-neutral conscription. And another question is whether large standing armies are still necessary in an era of advanced weapons, cyber warfare, and drone technology. Critics argue that modern warfare relies more on technology and expertise than sheer troop numbers. So ultimately, each country faces difficult security realities, that is, and finding a balanced and country-specific solution, this remains the key issue, key challenge. And security choices now will shape the next generation.
It does look like it will be that way. So would you have anything to add, Brooke?
Yeah, some other controversies I'd like to point out would be individual rights and economic impact as well. We've been talking a lot today about the mandatory military service in Korea, and having been here for quite a long time, and I've spoken to many Koreans about this, a lot of them see it as something that infringes on their personal freedom and the right to choose their own career paths as well as their own timeline on that career path. It really is a giant swath of time that you cannot focus on your own plans. So it forces young people into this obligation during a formative time in their lives. And others also point out potential downsides for national productivity, because if you're pulling all of these young people into the military, then you have a smaller labor pool, and that can strain economies, especially in places like Korea where we have an aging society and low birth rates. So taking all of the youth and putting them into the military does strain the economy here as well. But on the flip side, proponents say that if you have conscription, it can bolster your national defense and also foster a sense of civic duty. I would say that's more of the American mindset, but obviously it varies by country, and it's a very nuanced and polarizing issue. People have strong feelings about it, as we've seen in the footage of protests today. So I think every country is going to handle it a little bit differently depending on their cultures, their ideals, and their values.
Right, so as wars and security threats evolve, countries around the world are once again rethinking how their military should be built. From Europe to Korea and the United States, each system reflects different histories, values, and social realities. But one question remains the same everywhere: who should bear the responsibility of national defense in a changing world? The debate over conscription may look different in every country, but it's clear the conversation is far from over. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. When News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Chun.
Thank you for having me, Sejin.
And also Brooke.
Always a pleasure.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoy a peaceful day ahead. We are News Generation.